to Mindfulness Collective. This right here, right. Oh, right now. It's the joy of being a live stream, coming to you live from Brooklyn, New York. And if you're joining us anywhere on the planet, I want to know where. Where is that? Where is this thing pointing? I can't even tell. It's over here. Where are you joining us from, folks? Where are you joining us from? Okay, we already have people popping in here. Zen Mind asks, can we meditate on state prior to awareness? I don't know that there is a state prior to awareness. It's just whether we notice awareness or not. Welcome, folks. Let's see. 613 says, FYI, your Twitch notification says deep mindfulness. You know, I've tried to correct that. Is now live. We haven't been able to find out where that's written, where that comes from. We've tried to correct that numerous times. Will you forward that to me? I'm going to put my email in the chat right now. Let's see here. Okay. There it is. If you wouldn't mind, send us that. It bugs me. I've tried to fix that numerous times. I do not know how to fix that. I think it might be on some other platform. Hello. Denny is back. Nick is here. Hello, DMC. Come to you live from the Body Mind in the blue ergonomically correct office chair located in Karlstad University, Sweden. University? I feel like I didn't know that it was some university. Let's see here. Okay, oh, she's got my sweater. Okay, Doggy Cam active. Okay, so Gene, good morning from Brooklyn. Rory, good morning from Kingston, Ontario. I feel like, Rory, we never hear from you. You say good morning, and then that's all we hear from you for the day, which is fine. No pressure, but I think it's so funny. Gene says, ooh, DMC, like Run DMC. Yeah, we actually, the way we think of it is Sit DMC. Yeah, like that. Jamaica John. John, great to have you here. John is here with us, recuperating, having a good time. Glad you're here, as always. Kill it, Zila, kill it. I've told you before, she's a ratter, meaning she hunts. She's supposed to, breed-wise, hunt rats. So she's a real fighter. Come on, you tough guy. Beat him up. Get that rat. So, folks, okay, so who was it who said, Zen Mind said, can we do the state before awareness? Help me understand that, because I'm going to give you guys a definition of awareness from my perspective, and then we can talk about what would a state before awareness be. In a way, it's like, so can we talk about the state before the breath? It's like, it's a sensory phenomena, so the only thing before it is just before you notice it. So, from the way I define it. So, with that, okay, Sila. That's the end. You can be alone on the doggy cam. Okay, so the point is awareness. So you've seen me do this demonstration before. It's never not valuable to do again. So this is the way I'd like to demonstrate it. This is the fastest way I've seen anyone else demonstrate. If somebody else has a better, more efficient way. Oh, look, the cloud thing is not on. Maybe that's better. No cloud. No statement of who we are. Where is the overlay? Cloud. Overlay. There it is. Maybe I'll edit this thing. It's been the same for so long. Okay, Zila. That's a little squeaky. Come on now. Come on now. Okay, leave it. Leave it. No, leave it. Good girl. Good, leave it. Okay. So we'll do this demonstration now. So right now, as you're looking at this, can you tell that you're hearing? Okay. Should be a pretty easy yes. Not a trick question. Can you tell that you're seeing? Okay, pretty straightforward. Can you tell that you're feeling, that you have a physical human body? That you have body sensations, or body sensations are occurring? Yeah, those are all pretty easy. Now we know that seeing, hearing, and feeling are different. Each one has its own sort of unique qualities and characteristics, and it's pretty straightforward. Seeing is not the same as hearing experientially. However, something among all three of those was the same, and it's the part of the mind that knows. It's the part of the mind that knows that you are doing that can tell this is what's happening. That is awareness. Awareness is the part of the mind that simply knows experiences. That knowing is extremely neutral. It is not pushing or pulling. It doesn't need the reality to be different. It's the only thing, the only part of the mind that knows, and it's the only part of the mind that can actually be, it's the only part of the mind that can be aware, and it's the only part of the mind that can be aware of awareness. So I realized something. Hey babe, I left the air purifier on. Yeah. Thank you so much. So, a little background noise here, air purifier going. So that's awareness. Now, we typically notice awareness as we zoom out, because the detail of whatever is zoomed into sort of fades away as we zoom out, but awareness can be anywhere. Awareness can be felt in a very small place. Awareness doesn't really care so much about edges. If we're using awareness to observe something, it often could be, it's potentially could be felt everywhere. So that's my short version of what the experience of awareness is. The mind has two big sort of sections: attention, which divides the world up into lots of objects, and awareness, which can know the overall experience. The two together make this kind of map that holds things together. So if you can right now be aware of your general environment, notice to do so, it kind of requires you to use, like, it's as though you're using your periphery. Even if you close your eyes and aren't using your eyes themselves, it's still a sense of sort of peripheral sort of knowing of this larger experience. Whenever you know all of the body's sensations as one general cloud of sensations, that's an example of awareness. The reason I don't say notice every single little sensation in your body, add them all together, because that's just attention going from one to the next to the next. Awareness can hold them all as a general package, so there's a difference there. So Zen mind, if you explain to me what you mean by the state before awareness, if that, given this definition, maybe we can help, but we want to explore awareness today in a very direct way. Folks, I got to be honest with you. I think that the clearing my throat thing I keep having lately is due to dairy. I used to be like I could eat whatever I want, and now I think dairy makes me be a little I don't want to admit it, because being on keto, one of the few pleasures that I get is whipped cream. Whipped cream is like the dessert that I can have easily. Okay, little doggy, we're going to make you a jetpack here. Hello, Sila. Hello. Want to say something to the people? Hello. Go ahead. Come on. Tell us the secret. What's the secret to awareness? Okay, fine. Tell us later. Exalted Bro says, awareness is often used synonymously with consciousness. It is. I don't think it's possible to experience anything beyond consciousness. Leave it. Phlegmatic. Oh, I see where you're going here. So I actually don't use the word consciousness because it is actually confusing, and I think that I don't have a great definition for it. I find that a lot of the time people will say, well, there's awareness, and then there's consciousness, and then there's this, and all these different pieces. I actually just prefer that awareness is, you have to be conscious in order for it to occur. A lack of consciousness is where you've drifted away from awareness. You're just in, you're unconscious when you're asleep, this kind of thing. But I think of it more in a literal term, like the system is not blacked out. So there is some awareness present if it is not unconscious. 613 says, I suppose there's those crazy jhana states like neither perception nor non-perception. Yeah, I think that gets, as you get to a more and more deconstructed experience, it's challenging because you're going off into a place that's pre-linguistic, and so you can use any language to describe it and then come back, reform and come back and say, oh, this is what happened. It was, neither perception nor non-perception. I was merged with God. I was everything. I was nothing. And a lot of these terms are very interchangeable. So we have to be very willing to say, when I'm describing neither perception nor non-perception, I'm willing to say that definition will mean nothing unless we all agree exactly what it is, which is usually people don't agree. Oh, I just realized something. Another request from my wifey. Hey, Raquel, the gate to the bedroom's open and she's looking for socks. I can tell she's in there hunting for socks. Okay, so hopefully that clarifies, but let's do a little practice based on exploring awareness. Sometimes I will talk about kind awareness, which I think is useful. Rather than adding anything, if you don't normally experience, well, just if you already know what I'm talking about, go ahead and see if adding kind awareness is helpful. If not, we're not going to address it too much, maybe a little bit towards the end. So for now, folks, find that nice comfortable position that you can maintain for the duration of the sit. I'm going to encourage you to be entirely still. If you need to move, however, great reason to move is if you need to. But making sure you wait 30 seconds, maybe you wait a minute, you do so very slowly, very mindfully. That's very important. Don't move quickly. You can lose concentration. And if you feel overwhelmed, even creeping in, you want to make whatever adjustment you need to. Open the eyes, stop the meditation, whatever you need. And we can talk more about that. Frank Wolf uses the term introception. Introception. Well, that's a term. I'd be curious how that's defined. Introception. Cool. I'd be very curious if you find that, after the, and thanks for piping up, Rory. I know I put you on the hot seat, and now here you are showing up with great info. Okay, so folks, finding that nice comfortable position that you can maintain for the duration of the sit. We'll practice for 30 minutes and then we'll have some fun. We'll have some more fun. So find that nice position. And when you're ready, we will begin. Oh, this is quite annoying. Okay, I can't fix this. Again, the card in the card reader is not going to work because I didn't properly eject it from my computer, and that means it won't work in the recorder, which is very silly. Okay, so it probably won't record. That is correct. No recording. So I can just go crazy. Okay, let's begin. Beginning by taking a few comfortable deep breaths and just feeling the body rise and fall. Because meditation involves a lot of repetition, it can be important to remind our system, remind the mind and the body of how important this particular moment is. So I'd like you to imagine that this is your only shot, your only chance to detect the sensations of a body breathing. And as we observe the body breathing, often what happens is we discover the kind of mind we're arriving to the practice with, one that's distracted, one that's settled, one that's tired. Often simply knowing what's occurring, knowing the way the mind is experiencing this particular moment is enough to break through that unconsciousness. What if, like some sort of heroic film or book, it was up to us, it was all on the line, and we needed to perceive the sensations of the body breathing for just a few moments to save the kingdom or universe. If we slip into worrying about the world around us, in this case, this fictional narrative of some hero's journey, if we slip into that, we lose the key to our success. Which is these sensations in this particular moment. Physically relaxing the body all the way down to the bone, as though if we let go deeply enough, even more than we can feel, the muscles in the body would simply float away. We may notice the breath someplace distinct, like the rising and falling of the abdomen or shoulders, at the tip of the nose. Or we may notice breath sensation all over the body. If we do notice it all over the body, just staying with this. If not, I'll guide through a process to detect the breath in a broad spectrum of places. So first noticing the rising and falling of the shoulders as the breath naturally comes and goes. No need to control it. The diaphragm naturally pulls down. This expands the belly, filling the lungs, which straightens the spine, expands the upper back and upper chest, causing the shoulders to rise slightly and pull back just slightly. If we can feel the shoulders moving as we breathe, we can likely feel the elbows moving just slightly as we breathe. If the elbows are moving, then there's likely some movement in the forearms and wrists. And if our entire arms are moving from the shoulders down to the wrists, certainly we can detect this in our ultra-sensitive hands. As we tune into very subtle breathing sensations all the way down to the hands. when we relax the lower belly and relax the hips, we may notice that we can feel the pressure of the diaphragm below the lungs pulling potentially all the way down to the pelvis. Perhaps noticing that each time the body breathes in and out, it tugs against the lower spine, causing the hips to move just slightly. If the belly's moving the hips, then the hips are moving the upper legs, down to the knees, and perhaps we can detect from the knees all the way down to the feet. If we're unsure, going ahead and taking a nice, subtle, slow, deep breath, seeing if we can detect this down in the legs and knees. And of course, if there's all this movement in the body, the head and neck which balance on the spinal cord, of course, these are moving along with this whole process. Not only this, but the cool air we breathe in cools the entire navel cavity. Cools the entire mouth and throat. The warm air we breathe out warms the throat and face. And when we breathe in, we may notice a subtle vacuum-like sensation on the inside of the nasal cavity or throat. A very subtle tightening as the breath comes in, and a release of this as the breath falls away. Because we've been, to some degree, dividing our experience piece by piece, this is how the mind will be observing it. So seeing if we can slowly find how we can shift the mind to capture all of the breath sensations in one big pool, one soft cloud. Of course, we won't catch every little detail. That's not the goal. The goal is to get an overall sense, a generalized capture. If we can't include a certain area, sometimes it's more challenging to include below the waist or below the knees. That's fine. Whatever appears easily. Allowing ourselves to be fascinated. No piece of entertainment or technological gadget has ever been able to show a human this level of experiential detail, this high of a resolution of experiencing. So we may find that we can't create a kind of bubble, something solid to grab onto. This is usually what the mind likes, an object, a thing to observe. What if we let go of that? And soak into the activity, the ongoing process that is body sensation. Remembering that the breath is simply a vehicle to show us the body. If at some point we can hold the body's experience without the breath, or it simply fades into the background, that's fine. And of course, it's natural that distraction arises. And this is either a problem or it's not. One way to recycle difficulty with distraction is to notice it as a body sensation. Notice the emotional resistance or challenge. So this moment, if there is any assessment of how this is going, in the mind it's going wonderfully or it's going terribly. We like it or we dislike it. Seeing if we can detect that subtle pull in the body. as though if some part of us, some part of the body's sensation had a magic wand, it would change this moment in some way. If we feel pain or discomfort, perhaps the mind would take that opportunity to change this. If we like this experience, the system may be craving more of it. If we dislike this experience, or there's something that seems to be wrong, it's helpful to know that these are not awareness. These are simply emotions in the body. Awareness is the part of the mind that can observe these without needing them, without needing to act on them. The part that can recognize these various forces as natural. Awareness is welcoming. Quiet. Soft. And of course, at times we're pulled to particular details. Some sense activity, maybe some sense of self, of me. Some sense of time, some location and space. And that's not a problem. That's the nature of the mind, to divide the world. So we simply reintroduce it. Reintroduce this particle to the whole. Any sense of how things should be is only painful if the mind is zoomed into it, consumed by it. So letting any particle be absorbed into this open, kind awareness. And what if, instead of some kind of state that we could imagine ourselves getting to now and then, or achieving or grasping, what if this awareness was home? What if it was the relief that we've been seeking? And going further, what if this awareness was actually the true me? Rather than all these tiny versions of me, the ones that need to fight and struggle. What if these cravings and aversions were simply ripples on the surface of the ocean that we ourselves are? And if we make another self out of this, that's fine. Just once again introducing that to the overall spacious, kind awareness. And this is the most important part of the meditation. So the instruction is that we will not move or adjust the body until the bell goes silent. And often at this point, the body will be filled with energy, preparing ourselves to move. The mind will become faster, planning the next moments. Just noticing each of these as particles, and introduce them to the overall experience of this spacious awareness. All of these drives have no force. They're simply floating in the ocean. Allowing a tiny bit of light to enter the eyes. Eventually allowing the eyes to rest on a single point. That's not text. That's not a screen. And letting this spaciousness of seeing, including all of seeing, not just part, not just this single point, letting this spaciousness be a medium to expand awareness. Notice for a moment that this awareness doesn't need you, the self. It doesn't need it to exist. In this way, letting this particular moment be the great teacher that shows us how we might bring this practice into every aspect of our life. Okay. What was that experience like? So I'm going to go ahead here and pop in our Zoom link if folks want to chat about their experience. Speak out loud. It's often a much more generous medium. It's a much more lucrative exchange. Ooh, if we can actually talk. As a teacher, the medium through which I have like two tools that exist: my experience and your experience. Together, they multiply to be something much bigger. So I can only share your experience either through. You could also type your experience. That's another way to get it across. And speaking it is often very fruitful as well. So go ahead and do any stretches or anything you need to allow the body to be comfortable. And then tell me, what on earth was that like? What happened and what do you like now? It's fun. I mean, it's fun. I'll just say inside baseball here, but it's fun to beep pop pop beep pop pop. It's fun to teach this stuff because it's hard to do it, experience it, and speak it at the same time. And then also extra added bonus of difficulty is to have this little sucker biting at your hand the whole time. She does this thing where she she wants play, so she scratches at your hand constantly. So it's just funny. It was cute. Good job, Celia. You kept me nice and distracted. But you put some weight on the barbell today, so it was extra challenge, which is good. That's how we learn how to bring this stuff into our lives. Okay, we got some commentios here. Let me pop over to my digital voice reader. Okay, let's see. Okay. Exalted H Bro says, voice activate.
Didn't do the meditation again, but progress update. Trauma fear from previous meditation is lessening a lot, and now I'm left with a more cognitive or rationalized fear of the unknown. I still have some sort of aversion to go deeper. I'm not sure if that's just normal fear or ego defenses activating or what.
Well, it's interesting. I don't know that those are different things. I don't know that normal fear and ego defenses are really that different. Let's see here. My dog is really digging under here for something. I want you to, whatever that is, you should probably stop. What are you digging for? What are you trying to get under here? What are you looking for? There's nothing under there for you. Leave it. Sorry, my dog's digging. I gotta figure out what it is. Okay, so what I would say again is you want to learn to trust your system. You want to learn to trust the body, especially if there's any background of trauma, anything like this. You really, really, really want to learn to let the system tell you when to stop. Now, this is one of those things you just don't hear a lot of teachers talk about this, in part because it was sort of an unknown factor for a really long time, and now in recent years and times, it's just become much more prevalent to talk about, is basically trauma-sensitive mindfulness. And it's just the fact that if you push too hard against the system, it will rebel and it won't let you meditate. Not that it won't let you, but it'll just be aversive. It'll be so uncomfortable because the system doesn't trust you, doesn't trust meditation, because it's just always painful. The way I talk about it is that overwhelm is the system yelling because we didn't listen when it was speaking or whispering. And we want to get so sensitive to it that we can hear it when it's whispering, know we need to make an adjustment. And then once the system trusts us, then we can really take off. So let me know if that rhymes with your experience and we can talk more about it. But I think you did great by not doing the practice if overwhelm was arising. There's plenty of practice that you can do. You could do the same practice we just did, just with the eyes open, just using the open spaciousness of awareness. That might be a really excellent practice because it doesn't require, closing the eyes, which is often can be triggering if you have a background in trauma, letting go physically, which can feel scary because it's we're going to float away or something scary could happen, these kind of things. So I think that's great. There's also P.S. the book, Trauma Sensitive Mindfulness, which I'm trying to fix my blanket here, which is probably a really good idea. That one and The Body Keeps the Score, probably really good, useful pieces for you if you want to dive into deeper meditation. Interestingly, those two will probably relate very well. Okay. Denny, also known as Black Black Skulls Merton, I'm probably mispronouncing that, says,
I find myself using my attention to test my awareness. I find myself constantly asking, am I aware of everything, or okay crap, I forgot to be aware of X, Y, Z. I know how counterintuitive this is. But it seems like my attention needs to do something. Naturally it goes into testing, critiquing mode.
So the thought, and this is something other people bring up, this is frequently the case, they'll say, well, but you said include all things. There's two ways of looking at all, right? There's, imagine like a camera with a big wide angle lens that can see 180 degrees, let's say there, right? So we could say, okay, well, I need to include all, so I've got to keep turning around and moving around, and this way I'm going to get all of it. But we never get any more. We just get the same view. But the mind is very busy looking for like where it is. And actually, when we're doing that, the likelihood is the mind's just going to notice a lot of tiny details and not look at the entire experience. So what we actually do is forget all the things that might be missing. We just cast a wide net. Some things are going to get missed. That's how it is. You cast a net in the ocean, and it's going to miss most of the fish. So we're just casting a wide net. So the distinction is, so for instance, now you can look at a single point, right? And you can zoom in on that point. You can look at the detail there. You can also look at your entire visual field altogether. Now you'll notice when you do that, the single point, it's not so easy to pay attention to anymore. If you're looking at the whole field, it's almost like it phases out and you're looking at something else, and then it kind of goes back, and you'll notice it might jump back and forth. And that is a great example of the difference of attention and awareness. So when you do this overall thing, look, you're losing the detail of that pinpoint. So clearly you're not getting, quote, everything. This is why I stopped using the word like, capture everything, and I try to use words more like a general sense of. So that's one part of your question. So just getting a general sense of is good. You're going to lose a lot of data because awareness is not as sharp as attention. The next part is find myself constantly asking, so whatever question is arising, am I aware of this? Am I blah, blah, blah? Just, it's a particle. You introduce that particle to the whole. That's you over and over and over again. Notice that when you find yourself at a particle, you slowly, I usually don't say zoom out, because I find that sometimes people are trying to force this thing to be bigger. They're trying to force their attention to be big, which is just hard to do. You just include the material that's around it. You're just including and including and including until there's more of a larger sense. So hopefully that clarifies a little bit. Let me know. And again, anyone, if I try to make a clarification and you have more of a question, definitely pipe up and we'll chat more. Okay, Nick says,
Echo, robot voice, your instructions on how to feel the breath in all parts of the body works very well. Just by the fact of reminding that all parts are connected and the sensation just trickles down or ripple out like waves, the intensity just decreases as they spread.
Excellent. That's great. And I'm glad that works, because that took me a long time to find myself. And then I realized it was so obvious. Like speaking to you now, I can feel the breath that I'm speaking in order to speak in my feet, because it's just, you train the system enough and it just gets used to that. So excellent. Keep going with that. You get sensitive enough and you can just absorb breath sensations anywhere in your body. It's a nice way, if you're interested in jhana, to go. Exalted says, my normal fear, by normal fear, I mean thinking based on fear, and ego defense, I mean an automatic visceral reaction. Again, I don't know that they're really that different. I don't know that you would logically sit there and be like, things to be afraid of. If there's fear arising, it is instinctual, whether you did it on purpose or not. And so, especially like, if you look at meditation sort of somewhat objectively, there's probably nothing in your environment that is clearly going to be a direct threat, I'm guessing, I'm hoping. There's probably not, anything that's going to be bad if you physically relax the body or relax the mind. But the system doesn't know that. If you right now imagine a scary tiger next to you, I don't recommend it, but this is a fact. The system will start to pump adrenaline and start to, make all these reactions like, okay, I got to take an action, or I got to, get the system ready, which is very, very weird. So we can imagine ourselves into terror. With trauma, what happens is our system sort of locks in on a certain arrangement of sensations and keeps reminding us of that over and over and over again. It is not safe to relax, or is not safe to quiet the mind, or it's not safe. You have to stay on high alert, because this danger that we perceived a long time ago, or recently, often a long time ago, is so significant we can never let that go. And so that's a slow process of learning to trust our system, learning to, I think, instead of just letting that go, the first thing is to recognize that it's occurring and that it's natural. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with the instinctual knee-jerk reaction to fear. In fact, it's natural. It's going to happen. Realizing that it's going to happen and that the system might be pushing against it, saying it shouldn't happen, is actually one of the best places to start. Because it's like, yeah, it should happen. There was trauma, or there was experience, something that was scary or whatever. So that's actually quite natural. Of course it's responding in this way. It gets rid of the aversion to the aversion. It gets rid of the fear of the fear. Often the difficulty is not the difficult emotion itself, it's the fear that that difficult emotion will overwhelm the entire system. So recognizing it as natural is quite skillful. Hopefully that helps and clarifies at least a bit. Jean now says,
I was able to stay pretty focused, had fewer distractions than normal. The idea of many little me's fighting internally amongst themselves made me smile. My vision felt very sharp when I opened my eyes, and it still feels somewhat that way. Cool.
Yeah. So you might notice, and anyone else might notice if you did the meditation, or if you are familiar with an awareness practice, because we just did it, this is the secret to meditation. We just did it, so the system can go to that much more easily. And at first we're putting a lot of effort. We're like, okay, be aware. And eventually the brain, which is very lazy, it's very flexible, it's very obedient, right? But it needs to be trained. It will just say, fine, I'll stay there. And that's what a lot of awakening is the system just staying in this place where we ask it to go, and we show it over and over again in this repetition. So as you're here, don't just throw away what we just did. See if you can have this larger awareness, this soft, open experience, the part that's neutral, the part that simply knows the experience. And in this way, you're continuing the meditation. That's where we get more advanced, is just continuously practicing, continuously connecting with that. And for me, it's often, the challenge that I'm trying to do is to replicate or re-experience the state that I was just describing, the depth of the meditation, as I'm speaking to you. So right now what's happening is, as I'm speaking to you, there's a sort of oscillation between the sort of this overall awareness that is very neutral, spacious, sort of confusingly disaggregated, connected. In a way, it's like softly deconstructed, and then this part of me that needs to make sense and needs to make sentences. And the interesting thing is, I don't actually need to, the part that thinks it needs to make sense, I've only been relying on that maybe 50% of the time. I've just been trying to give this explanation, and it seems to be working out pretty well. I have a sense that it did make sense. So then we get into a non-doing, non-self experience where we recognize the system actually doesn't need to do anything. The system will have a personality and explore and do these things on its own. So, fun times. I often love just explaining my perceptual experience. It's really fun. I think it'll be boring, but I often have a really good time doing it myself. Rory now says,
Franklin Merrill Wolff, 1887 to 1985, was an American mystic and esoteric philosopher. One of his fundamental contributions to epistemology was the notion of introperception, or knowledge through identity. This represents a transcendent form of knowledge which is neither conceptual nor empirical. It is perhaps the simplest and clearest definition ever proposed of what many mystics have called gnosis. From Wikipedia.
Yeah, that would be from those words, it would be hard for me to disentangle what I understood from that. I can imagine what that might mean. But it says that it's neither conceptual nor empirical. That's tough. I guess maybe it's not empirical that other people couldn't observe it directly. I guess maybe if you talk about wisdom in that way. So from my understanding in Buddhism, the three forms of knowing are understanding, insight, and wisdom. Understanding is concepts. So I recently went on a subreddit on Reddit, and they were talking about Zen, and it was very funny to me because it was very conceptual. It was very this is how it is. This is speaking from the realm of concept. Insight is is so simple sometimes it's very hard for people to understand, but it's sense data. So feel the sensations in your hand, right? That is direct experience. And it's in terms of like value and impact on your, transformation, it's like 1,000 times more valuable than understanding. So just having direct experience. So we don't even have to get to these cool states, whatever. If we observe the sensations of our hand and, hang out with that long enough, it'll tell us everything we need to know. So that's insight, direct sensory experience. And then wisdom is this thing that comes on its own through an accumulation of insight. You observe your senses enough, and suddenly the system will just throw you this big piece of knowing about existing and what it means to exist. Even subtle things, even, like you feel your hand enough times and suddenly you're like, oh, wait a minute. Like I remember I had this thing once where I was feeling cold and I was really like just tuning into it. And I was like, this is the same thing as pain. And suddenly it like, this whole thing about the system always being pushed and pulled against different senses, navigating the world through like pushing and pulling, came to the surface, became very clear. So like the reason why we breathe became very clear, because it's pleasant in the middle and painful if we don't do it. If we don't breathe in or don't breathe out, it's painful. So it keeps a biological system just in the habit of breathing. So that wisdom, it's weird to say that something that I'm experiencing is wisdom, but whatever, that wisdom came from just observing the insight of there's pain here, there's pain there, and it tells us something bigger about the world. So it's a knowing that is not based on thinking. There's some of that in there, but it's, so maybe in that way, that's what he's talking about, that it's not empirical, meaning it wasn't built through observation, it's not conceptual. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe he's just defining insight. I don't know. Jean says, let's let the computer read it. It's just long enough.
Oh yes, you're walking through all the parts of the body that you feel during breath gave a great example of how much detail there is to focus on.
Yeah. And one thing we want to do is remember that the mind, because the mind is trying to be efficient, it'll tell us nothing matters. It's very like nihilistic in a certain way in terms of our senses. It'll be like, yeah, I paid attention to the breath before. This stuff doesn't matter. How about this thought about how the new iPhone isn't waterproof, or some stupid article that I read this morning, or saw the headline of. So it'll just tell us all this other stuff. This is interesting. That's interesting. So it's part of our job to be very, very interested. And sometimes you can use a number of prompts. Jean and I actually were talking about this recently, but you can use a prompt. Just imagine you just appeared in this universe out of some other place. You're a time traveler. You just appeared in this moment. You can imagine that you were just born. You can imagine that you're just about to die. Whatever's not going to freak you out, but just something to give this system a little bit of motivation to be like, whoa, what is this experience? And people who've been on the stream for a while know that I use the experience of life and the awareness of that what we're experiencing is this incredibly unlikely phenomena of life as a way to motivate the system to be interested in the sensations. So we have here, Gabriel says,
I really like this way of exploring the breath sensation. I'm dealing with a lot of striving these days related to a creative project. I felt the striving melt down a bit in the awareness as the meditation evolved, but I wonder if metapractice is a better tool to work with striving for me in daily life.
And then you say, any ideas on dealing with striving in life and meditation is welcome. So a couple things. I don't know what the best thing is for you, because it's going to be contingent on your practice and your life and what works for you, etc. I think these are both great options. One option is doing this kind of practice, an awareness practice, because the awareness will just show us that whatever's happening is happening. When we're really in touch with awareness, whatever's happening is nature. So I think one thing to consider is that to recognize the striving as a sensation, as a set of sort of pushing and pulling pieces of content in the body. And you'll notice that at first we talked about the breath, and at some point we sort of let the breath go and we were just hanging out with the body sensations. So that was just a transition to awareness rather than just awareness of the breath. My knee is on a cord. Okay. So not a Honda cord, like a physical cord. So I'm really kicking out the dad jokes, really pumping them out. So what was I going to say? I was talking about awareness. Oh yeah, so to recognize that those cravings and that drive is natural. It's nature. Of course it's going to do that. And a lot of the time the challenge is not the drive, it's the resistance to the drive. So this is something I mentioned, that these ripples on the ocean, they don't affect the entire ocean if they have enough space to exist in. A little boat can't be thrown around by the waves if the boat is actually the ocean, right? There's no way, it doesn't really matter. So to see that sensation, that set of forces within you, and to open up awareness to include all of this other material, suddenly there's nothing for that thing to grab onto. It's natural, of course, it wants that thing, just like we talked before about fear. Yeah, fear might want to be there, that's no problem. And then letting it exist among all the other sensations. So that's one practice. You don't have to worry about the breath. You can just let it exist among all the other sensations, breath or no. Metta practice might be a great opportunity. I do teach metta practice a little differently, so I'm going to talk about it the way I teach it, and then whatever works for you, whatever you think works. So the way that I teach metta practice is a little different. So it's actually similar to this. In the mind, you just say, with as little efforting as possible, you just say, "May you be peaceful." That's the central phrase, and it's meant to encapsulate all of the traditional metta phrases. May you be safe, healthy, happy, and live easily. That kind of thing. There's even much more elaborate versions. But when I practice in Burma with a teacher named U Indika, he used "May you be peaceful" to mean all of those things. But not only to mean that, it means everything from just a little bit of calm all the way down to cessation, or the extinguishing of consciousness that leads to awakening. So when we say "may you be peaceful," it's very, very, very rich. But what happens often is that people very much over effort. They're like, "May you be peaceful," and they're like, there's so much efforting. The less efforting we can use, the better. This is the most important thing, is just as little efforting as possible. So we do mean it. We say, "May you be peaceful," but we're not like, "May you be peaceful," because that's, in a way, it's like adding more craving. So when you wish something, there is a bit of craving, there's a bit of wanting, there's a bit of desire for change. That's why we effort as little as possible, because then we're hovering in this edge between very deep equanimity, peace, and the world of wanting or needing or wanting a change. And by hovering between those two, we're getting juice, we're getting fed. What do we mean by peaceful? So we're feeding from the deep equanimity, the non-doing, and saying, "May you have this thing." And there's that little bit of efforting, and that little tiny bit of efforting, that's the object of meditation. Actually, that's the thing that we're honing in on. May you be peaceful. May you be peaceful. Now, there was one other detail that's very important that I want to mention, is that what are we wishing peace? When we say "you," is it to the world? Is it to the me or the self that I see existing? Is it to the agitation I find? Is it to that drive that we find within us? The answer is yes. It is to anything that is not peace. Well, what things are not peace? Well, everything is not peaceful to some degree. So at some point we just have to say, yeah, we're just wishing this thing. That's fine. We're not trying to change the things. We're just wishing it peace. May you be peaceful. May you be peaceful. May you be peaceful. Whatever arises, if the system rebels, "I don't like this. This is stupid." I understand. Of course, that's natural. May you be peaceful. We're not trying to force anything. So that's the way that I teach metta. There's a little more detail, but actually, I have guided meditations on that, and I'll give them to you right here. That's a little secret link where there's my guided meditations on metta. We used to use the word metta mind state. Now I use the term kind awareness, because I think that that's actually closer to what it is. It is awareness that's just ever so slightly kind. The less efforting, the better. I can't emphasize that enough. Okay, so going back here, let me know if that answers your question. If you have more questions, let me know. I'm happy to clarify. Nick says,
"Can you say that the feeling of being on edge all the time is probably a natural response to, say, some trauma tucked away somewhere in the body and unconscious? And the guilt and shame-related stuff is just blaming my body for having understandable defense mechanisms. And that trying to get rid of them actually gets in the way of actually adapting to this current environment that isn't as threatening as early age felt, and teach it not reenact, we act the same responses over and over.
That's super clear. I want to add one thing, which is the possibility that that being on edge all the time is, first, it is natural. It may be in response to a trauma tucked away, but it might just be in response to an environment that, I don't know, feels scary, because if you walk outside and breathe, you could freaking die. Like that will put any human being on edge. It'll put any animal on edge if they understand what's happening. And it's part of the gift and the trauma of having a mind is an animal can't walk outside and know that, okay, if it breathes wrong or walks next to another animal, it could die. That will happen. And we can understand that, which keeps us safer. But the way it keeps us safer is by putting us in anxiety all the time, so we're looking and watching and looking and watching. So ideally, what we do is be able to say, okay, I'm not going to go apple bobbing into the kissing booth. Not a good idea. However, I can have a mask and be outdoors and be 6 feet away from loved ones and have Thanksgiving. This is what we did for Thanksgiving over here. I don't know how much you celebrate the American Thanksgiving holiday in Sweden, but I'm assuming you do because I'm an American. So it could be anything. And often what happens is that the ordinary anxiety that is pretty prevalent right now, it's pretty intense for everyone. I want everyone to really remember this is a very intense time. It's global. People just forget it all the time. They're like, yeah, I don't know, but maybe they're just forgetting that, like, this is a very stressful time. A lot of students I'm talking to are having a very big, hard time. A lot of relationships are crashing. A lot of difficulty happening right now. So just give yourself a break is one part. So that normal anxiety that people might feel in this experience, if there's trauma or even a hint of trauma, some developmental trauma or something, it can heighten that even more. It can sort of multiply it. So, but everything you said is exactly the case. It's just the system responding to its environment, accepting that is natural. Of course, the system's going to have anxiety. This is a challenging experience, not only just conceptually, but experientially, there it is in the body. I feel it. That's fine. It's uncomfortable, but it's fine. Pushing against it sort of emotionally is not going to make it better. So just, having that acceptance. Okay. Next we have Exalted Bro saying, a question.
Does our system have some sort of inbuilt fear of letting go and surrendering to the openness of awareness?
So the question is, does it have an inbuilt system that has a fear of letting go? That's a big question. That's a big question in meditation circles right now, is basically, here's what I want to reframe this, and you might be surprised that I'm going to reframe it this way, so I'd be curious about your response. Does our system have an inbuilt dark night protocol? Does it fear awakening and liberation inherently, or is that something that is just personal or environmental or this kind of thing? It's unclear right now, but a pretty good theory is that people who experience the dark night, basically the sometimes mild, sometimes very deep turbulence that can occur as one approaches deeper and deeper levels of freedom, is due to trauma. That's a theory. I can't say that that's 100% true. It seems like there's a pretty good, there's a lot of evidence pointing in that direction. So I don't want to say it's 100% true. But when we talk about the dark night, we're like, why is it that some people this and some people that? And we're not cross-referencing for trauma or developmental trauma. People aren't cross-referencing the test. I'm sure that in the next 5 years, that'll be, we'll have a lot more clarity around that. But that would be a very clear indicator. And I think that somatically held emotion, it's pretty understood now that somatically held emotion is a direct relationship to developmental trauma or trauma, and that is often when people talk about the dark night of the spirit, sometimes through first path we experience the dark night of the soul, second path we experience dark night of the spirit, which is just often all of the bodily held emotion, that's very directly related to trauma. So there's a fair amount of evidence there. So I think the system has a safety mechanism. Whether it experiences freedom as unsafe is a big question. I think, this is my personal read, is that we have different drives within us, and the dark night experience is two forces moving against each other. One force, which is a drive for freedom, especially once we really start to get into insight practice, we can just taste the freedom. sort of in front of us or currently or on the horizon. And on the other hand is this drive or sort of, we'll just say drive for safety and security and stability. And if that drive for safety is overly active, right, it'll do all sorts of crazy stuff, including say no to deep freedom. So a lot of what we need to do, and this is what I'm recommending for you, is to really deeply find that part that needs safety and get it safety, get it to feel safe, get it to feel okay, to have its needs met. So it's not going into your meditation practice and saying, oh no, don't let go of your body, right? We actually find a way to talk to it, find a way to connect with it, find a way to meet its needs. Maybe it needs friendship or a hug, or maybe it needs fitness or whatever. It could have a bunch of needs. It could need to just be heard. Maybe there has to be a dialogue there. This is, and I'm describing this from a perspective of internal family systems therapy or the multiple self model. To have that part's needs met, it will not interfere with the freedom process. And often what we do is try to stuff that part down, like shut up part that needs safety. And it's like, just to recognize that drive for safety is natural. It's just another pressure within the system. It's just another force. We don't have to fight it. We don't want to try to get rid of it. It's always going to want some kind of safety. And if we try to suppress that, it will come out in all sorts of crazy things. Like people want safety, so they yell at everybody and try to control things. They want safety, so they use drugs so that they can finally feel at peace or feel really excited or whatever it is. It will come out in our lives in all sorts of not so pleasant ways. So we want to respect the various drives and needs within us. So hopefully that helps clarify at least a little bit. Nick now says,
just feels like stuff comes in some algorithms process it, reactions comes out, highly predictable and triggering feelings of boredom, so that's something new. At least maybe that will help change the old reactions over time. Like, it will be nice if it happens, but if it doesn't, it's not my fault for doing it wrong. More like stuff will happen.
Yeah. It's really important, whatever happens, to just be like, oh, of course, that makes perfect sense that would happen to anyone. This is a natural experience of being a human. It's such a relieving position to take, rather than, what's wrong with me? Why can't I do X, Y, and Z? It's like, yeah, of course this is happening. I can take actions, but my actions are natural. The difficulty is natural. I mean, this is something that often people who know Buddhism or think about Buddhism struggle with. Self is not bad. And trying to be like, oh, no self good, self bad, that's dangerous for us, for our experiences. That's not a good idea. Clinging and aversion, clinging and aversion are bad. No, they are not bad. They're natural. We don't want to be driven by them. We don't want to be consumed by them. We don't want to be merged with our clinging and aversion, have no control. But they're natural. And so trying to be like, oh, there's clinging, god damn it, why don't I get rid of that stupid clinging? What is that? That's just more aversion. So to recognize, yes, the system is clinging. Of course it's clinging. So the system is over here being like, I need the dog to stop barking. We had barking today and a lot in other things. It's like, I need it to stop barking. I need it to stop barking. We don't say, shut up, stop needing it to stop barking. We say, yes, of course you do that. You're in this nice peaceful experience. You hear a dog bark. Of course, and you see that clinging happening. You just, yes, of course, I see you. Got you. I understand. That makes a lot of sense. And there's a way in which stepping back, and suddenly this little particle has this experience of space. So it's no longer, it has nothing to grip onto. It's like I think about like a swimmer in a swimming pool. Like it can't kick off and get momentum if there's nothing around it. It's just open and spaciousness. Or the metaphor that the Buddha uses, like a teaspoon of water in a cup or a teaspoon of water in an ocean. One's undrinkable, one is hardly noticeable. I guess in an ocean it would be noticeable, but in a lake, let's say that. Let's see. Nick says, pre-2020. Denny says, are the Metta Meditations within the 15 or another set? It is another set. It's a secret set. So you see the 15 meditations coming up here. You can find those at deepmindfulness.io/audio video, I think it is. If you look on our page, on our webpage, it's audio video. This one is an unlinked page, so it's deepmindfulness.io/tools. There are two big things there. There's three, but there's two that are unique that you can't find other places, sort of. One is the set of Metta Meditations that are different. It's a totally different set. And then the other one is, what am I talking about? The other one What am I talking about? Meditation? I just literally forgot where I was and what was happening. That happens sometimes. I'm talking about Metta Meditation. I can do this, folks. I can pull this off. Metta Meditation. And oh yeah, so the other thing there is an exercise that I use with people all the time. I use it myself. Values exercise, where you write down or you break down to your top 10 values. A great way for making decisions. Great way for making sure our lives are aligned with what's important to us. Two tools that are available there. Exalted. H. Bro says,
in natural awareness practice, our anchor is awareness. Since awareness is intangible like our breath or our body sensations, anchoring in awareness can create anxiety.
Okay, so it can. Yeah, I think that's fair. You say it can create anxiety. That's not bad. That's from a book called The Little Book of Being. Okay, that's great.
Another take from the book was that we were used to clinging and awareness is non-clinging, so we are not used to non-clinging and it's scary.
Yeah. Well, it's I think that's fair. I think that's a fair thing. The system, again, it clings and averts to stabilize itself, to keep itself feeling like it knows the world, it can contain the world, it can understand and package the world into something it can navigate, versus this really deep chaos of sensing. Nietzsche used to talk about that if we could experience the world outside of the lens of the mind trying to control it, that we would go mad, that we would go crazy. I don't think that that's the case. I don't think we go mad. I think some people could. I think we would just experience awakening, and that's what the process of awakening is disaggregating that. But here's what I was saying before, and I'm saying it in a different way. It's not just disaggregating that. It's skillfully reaggregating, knowing it's going to reaggregate on its own anyway. So we're going to have an experience of self at times. Even if we have extremely deep experiences of non-self, we're going to have experiences of self at times. So which self do we want? Which self do we want to invest in? This is why I recommend that we use awareness and start to relate to it as the true self, the actual me, because we are going to return to a self. So why not actually have it be this one where it's very thin air. There's not a lot of space for an ego in there. So we say, oh, that's actually me. That's who I am. This is also what was intuited and is used in internal family systems / the multiple self model, because it's very clever. In internal family systems therapy, they refer to it just as you. They'll say, how do you feel right now? It's like, oh, I'm mad and I feel annoyed and this person's like this. It's like, okay, so a part of you, listen to the language they'll use. Oh, so it sounds like a part of you feels like you're angry at this thing that this person said. Like, yeah, a part of me is, right? So now we've taken this thing that we're merged with, turned it into a particle, and now we have a little bit of perspective. They say, how do you feel about that part? Well, it makes me mad. They know that you're still merged. Okay, well, so we know that part of you is mad, but how do you feel about that part? Indicating that you are not that part, right? So the mind immediately is very clever, just jumps into that form and says, well, how do I feel about that part? And if you say, well, I don't like it. I don't like that part. Okay, they know there's another part. There's a part that feels angry, and there's a part that doesn't like the part that feels angry. So now we're starting to see these various parts within ourselves. Eventually, you keep kind of asking, it's like, okay, so what does that feel like? They're sort of pointing you back to an experiential thing. And eventually it gets to this place where you say, how do you feel about that thing? And they know you're kind of hitting on it when you say, well, I feel like compassion for it. I feel like it's tough. I feel like it's life. That part's life is really hard. It's like always afraid. It's always mad. Okay, now we're getting into what they call you. It's a little tricky because they call it just the self, but they're referring to what Hinduism calls the true self, what I'm referring to as this kind awareness. The true being, the metta with one T, metta self, the over self. Hopefully that's interesting. This is some really fun stuff for me. When I submit my email, thank you for telling me this, Denny. I can tell there's a technical part. When I submit my email, meditation 15, the message 15 guided meditations are headed to your inbox as we speak. Okay, so check your inbox. Email me. Let's get this worked out because I don't want there to be a technical glitch here, but I don't want to waste time in the stream too. Okay, whatever email you get, just forward it to me. And someone else mentioned that beep, 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 that it says deep mindfulness or something like that. So whatever email you got, send it to me and I will fix that. I'm not sure. Okay, great. So folks, great time with you here. The computer here is reminding me that if you have Amazon Prime, you can support this stream. Actually, you can give us money and it costs you no money. It costs Amazon money. I think that's a great deal because I like exploiting every cent out of these services that like steal all my data and like whatever. So if you have Amazon Prime, you can support this stream by following that link that just popped up there in the chat. But more importantly than that, folks, I have a wish for you. That wish is in this particular moment, right here, right now. If you can contact that kind awareness, if you can contact that knowing that is maybe a little bigger than all the thoughts and opinions and drives and the pushing and pulling that can happen within us, we have a shot. We have a shot at deconstructing the difficulty of clinging and aversion, knowing it as nature. So in this moment, just taking a few seconds to connect with your experience so far in this meditation, in this life, with each other. Let's soak in also to the group field. Maybe we're watching this on a playback, or maybe we're here live right now, just noticing that group experience. There are others experiencing this also. This is a helpful way to expand awareness, is to consider others, to consider something beyond our self view or one of the selves views. So just to consider that and use that as our path forward, our way to flow along in our day. So folks, very happy to be here with you. We'll be back here in fewer than 48 hours taking requests. Friday is Freaky Friday. That's when we take your requests and jump in that way. You know, I wanna jump over here. Our friend, what I'm gonna do here is this our friend? No, okay, sorry. I thought our friend was streaming. I was gonna pop us over here to raid those guys. So instead, I'm just gonna say the following, folks. As always, practice well, take care of each other, have fun, and we will see you all very, very soon. Bye.